I watched my sister step onto the stage, wearing the exact shade of blue I'd begged for last month, and pretended the applause didn't sound like thunder in my empty chest. The gymnasium was too bright. Those fluorescent lights made everything look washed out, clinical, like a hospital waiting room where no one was waiting for you. I sat in the third row with my folder pressed against my ribs, scanning the entrance every few seconds. The meeting had started 12 minutes ago. 12 minutes of teachers calling names, parents standing, cameras flashing, 12 minutes of me watching the doors and telling myself they were just running late. They weren't coming. I knew it the same way I knew my own heartbeat. The same way I'd known it last year, and the year before that, and every parent-teacher conference since middle school. But knowing didn't make it easier. Knowing just made me feel stupid for hoping. "Eleanor Bennett!" Mrs. Patterson's voice cut through the applause for someone else's daughter. I stood slowly, folder still clutched to my chest like armour. My fingers had gone numb around the edges. The silence was immediate. While other students had been greeted with whistles, cheers, parents rushing to stand, I got the soft shuffle of people looking away. Sympathetic, embarrassed, pitying. I hated that sound more than actual laughter. Mrs. Patterson's smile was kind. Too kind. The kind that made your throat close up. Eleanor has maintained a 4.0 GPA for 3 consecutive years. She's been accepted to 7 universities, including 2 Ivy Leagues. Her essay on systemic inequality in public education will be published in next month's academic journal. She paused, glancing toward the empty seats beside me. She's also captain of the debate team and volunteers at the community centre every weekend. More silence. A few scattered claps that felt like coins dropped in a beggar's cup. I smiled. I'd practiced that smile in the mirror until it looked natural, until it didn't show the cracks underneath. "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson." I sat down and stared at my hands. My sister Vivian was probably at the salon right now, getting ready for whatever party our parents were throwing her this weekend. Another celebration. Another reason for them to smile at her the way they'd stopped smiling at me. The meeting ended an hour later. Parents gathered their coats, congratulated each other, took photos with their children and the teachers who'd praised them. I folded my award certificate into precise thirds and tucked it into my bag between my chemistry textbook and the permission slip I'd signed myself last week. Field trip to the Science Museum, parent signature required. I'd gotten good at forging my mother's handwriting. The loops were easy once you stopped caring about getting caught. Outside, the parking lot was a maze of headlights and exhaust fumes. I walked past clusters of families, past fathers ruffling their sons' hair and mothers wiping proud tears, past all that warmth I'd stopped believing was meant for people like me. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. "Vivian needs us to pick her up from the boutique. Running late, there's dinner in the fridge." Not an apology, not even an acknowledgement that tonight had mattered. Just instructions like I was the house manager instead of her daughter. I typed back okay and deleted it 3 times before sending nothing at all. The bus stop was empty except for an old woman with grocery bags and a man talking too loudly on his phone. I sat on the far end of the bench and watched cars pass. Each one could have been theirs. Each one wasn't. When I got home, the house was dark except for the kitchen light. They'd left the dinner, leftover pasta in a container with my name on a post-it note. Thoughtful in that distant, transactional way. I ate, standing up at the counter, scrolling through photos Vivian had posted an hour ago. Her in a designer dress. Our parents on either side of her, faces bright with pride and champagne. The caption, "Best family ever." I wasn't in any of the photos. I was never in the photos anymore. I washed my dish, turned off the light, and climbed the stairs to my room. The house felt bigger at night, all that empty space between bedrooms. I could hear my own footsteps too clearly. In my room, I spread the award certificate on my desk and stared at it. 7 universities, a published essay, 3 years of perfect grades, None of it had been enough to make them show up. None of it had been enough to make them see me. I thought about next month's ceremony. Another stage, another empty seat. I thought about college, about leaving, about how relieved they'd probably be when I was just gone. One less obligation, one less daughter they had to pretend to care about. The numbness I'd been holding back all night finally broke through. Not tears. Something deeper. Something that felt like drowning in still water. I thought about all the small deaths I'd already endured. The 8th grade graduation where I'd stood alone while other families took photos. The debate championship where I'd accepted my trophy to polite applause and no one waiting afterward. The night of my 16th birthday when they'd forgotten entirely, too busy planning Vivian's sweet 16 that was still 3 months away. Each disappointment had carved out a little more of me, until I was mostly hollow. A shell performing the motions of being their daughter, while the real me had already started disappearing. I lay down fully clothed and closed my eyes. The darkness felt final, complete, like closing a door I'd never open again. When I opened them again, I was staring at a ceiling I recognised but couldn't place. The wallpaper was wrong, pale yellow instead of grey. My hands looked smaller. The bed was narrower. I sat up slowly, head spinning with the weight of impossible memories. The room was mine, but wasn't. My desk was cluttered with middle-bow, school textbooks. The bulletin board held photos from 3 years ago. Vivian and me at the beach, building sandcastles. Our parents smiling, actually present. Before everything had shifted. Before I'd become invisible. My phone, an older model I'd replaced sophomore year, showed the date, 3 years ago. The morning of my first high school parent-teacher meeting. I stood on legs that felt uncertain, crossed to the mirror, and stared at my reflection. 14-year-old me stared back, rounder face, uncertain eyes, still believing that effort equaled love. Still believing that if I just tried hard enough, worked hard enough, achieved enough, they would finally see me. The memories were intact. Every disappointment, every empty seat, every moment of standing alone while other families celebrated together. The eating disorder I'd developed junior year from trying to look more like Vivian. The anxiety attacks before every event, knowing they wouldn't come. The way I'd learnt to make myself smaller and smaller until I'd almost disappeared entirely. I knew how this story ended. I'd lived it. I'd died from it, not literally, but close enough. The girl in the mirror didn't know yet. She still had hope. I wouldn't make that mistake again. I moved through the morning in a daze, touching objects that felt both familiar and strange. My bookshelf still had novels I'd given away years ago. My closet held clothes I'd forgotten I'd owned. Everything was younger, brighter, unmarked by the years of neglect that would follow. Downstairs, my mother was making breakfast. The smell of eggs and toast felt surreal, dreamlike. I descended the stairs slowly, watching her move around the kitchen with the easy efficiency of someone who hadn't yet decided which daughter mattered more. "Morning, sweetheart," she glanced up, smiling. A real smile, not the distracted one I'd grown used to. "Big day today, your first high school parent-teacher meeting." The words hit differently this time. I studied her face, looking for signs of the future betrayal, but she just looked like my mother, present, attentive, not yet consumed by Vivian's endless needs. "Are you coming?" The words came out flat. I watched her face carefully. She hesitated, just a fraction of a second, but I saw it. The micro-calculation, the weighing of priorities. In that tiny pause, I saw the next 3 years unfold, the pattern beginning, the choice being made. "Of course, wouldn't miss it. Your father's finishing up a conference call, but we'll both be there." She was lying, not consciously maybe, but I knew because I'd heard this exact promise before. They'd miss it. Vivian would call with some minor emergency, a dress that didn't fit, a friend who'd said something mean, some manufactured crisis that would somehow eclipse my actual achievement. And they'd choose her without hesitation. Again. Okay, I said, not because I believed her, because I didn't need to argue anymore. I ate breakfast in silence, watching my parents perform their morning routine. My father scrolling through emails, barely present even when physically here. My mother organising Vivian's schedule, making sure every detail of her day was perfect. I existed in the margins of their awareness, present but unimportant. Vivian bounced into the kitchen 20 minutes later, all energy and demands. Mum, did you call the boutique? They said my dress might not be ready until Friday, but I need it Thursday for the gallery opening. I'll call them again, my mother said immediately, already reaching for her phone. And Dad, you're still coming to see my painting, right? Mrs. Liu said it might win an award. Wouldn't miss it. My father looked up from his phone, actually focusing on her. What time? 6, but come early so we can get good seats. I watched this exchange with the clarity of someone who'd lived it before, watched how quickly their attention pivoted to her, how easily I faded into the background. The difference was that this time I understood it wasn't personal. It wasn't that I wasn't enough. It was that they'd trained themselves to respond to her volume, her demands, her constant need for validation. I'd trained them to ignore me by being self-sufficient. That was going to change. At school, I moved through classes with a strange detachment. I knew the lessons already. I knew which questions teachers would ask, which projects would be assigned. But more than that, I knew which battles weren't worth fighting. When Jessica approached me at lunch, I saw the request coming before she opened her mouth. Hey, Eleanor, did you finish the calc homework? I was totally lost on the last section. Last time I'd given her my work, desperate for friendship, she'd copied it without understanding, gotten an A and never spoken to me again outside of asking for more answers. I did, I said, but I can explain how to solve it if you want to work through it together. She looked annoyed. I don't really have time for that. Can't you just... No. The word came out gentle but firm. I can help you learn it, or you can figure it out yourself. But I'm not doing your work for you. She walked away without another word. I felt nothing. No guilt, no desperate need to call her back and apologise. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing my own worth. When Coach Miller suggested I try out for volleyball during study hall, I declined politely. I appreciate the offer, but I'm focusing on other activities this year. You sure? You'd be great on the team. I'd spent 2 years on that team in my previous timeline, sitting on benches, being told I was almost good enough. Never quite making starting lineup, despite working twice as hard as everyone else. I'm sure, thank you though. When my history teacher, Mr. Patel, asked me to stay after class to discuss my essay, I listened to his praise without the desperate gratitude I'd felt before. He wanted me to enter a competition. It could really help with college applications, he said earnestly. Your analysis of the Industrial Revolution's impact on labour movements is sophisticated beyond your years. I'll think about it, I replied, knowing I wouldn't. I'd won that competition the first time. My parents had been too busy celebrating Vivian's art show to attend the awards ceremony. I'd stood on stage holding my trophy, scanning the audience for their faces, finding only strangers. Eleanor. Mr. Patel's voice was concerned. Are you all right? You seem different today. I'm fine. I met his eyes. Just tired. If you ever need to talk, thank you. I appreciate that. The day moved toward evening like water toward a drain. Inevitable. I packed my folder with the same careful precision, but this time I felt none of the anxiety, none of the hope. I knew what was coming, the text, the excuse, the empty seats. The gymnasium looked exactly as I remembered. Same fluorescent lights, same folding chairs, same stage where teachers would call names and parents would stand. I took my seat in the third row and didn't bother looking at the doors. 5 minutes before the meeting started, my phone buzzed. My mother. something came up with Vivian. Her painting fell off the wall at the gallery and she's devastated. We need to be here for her. We're so sorry. We'll make it up to you. I stared at the text. The same words, the same excuse, different crisis, same pattern. The painting hadn't actually fallen. I'd learned later it had just shifted slightly and Vivian had panicked. But they'd never verified. They'd just responded to her distress signal like trained dogs. I turned off my phone and slipped it into my bag. Around me, parents were settling into seats, adjusting cameras, whispering encouragement to their children. The energy in the room was warm, anticipatory. I sat in the centre of it like a stone in a river, letting it flow around me. Mrs. Patterson eventually called my name. I stood with my folder, shoulders straight, and met her kind, pitying eyes with something she didn't expect. Calm. Complete, unshakable calm. She listed my achievements. Same speech, different year. The gymnasium fell into that familiar, uncomfortable silence. Empty seats on either side of me. I felt the weight of people's stares, their discomfort, their pity. But this time, I didn't smile. I didn't perform gratitude or pretend the absence didn't hurt. I simply stood there, present in my own pain, refusing to make it smaller for anyone's comfort. "Thank you," I said when she finished. My voice carried through the gymnasium, clear, certain. "I appreciate the recognition." I sat down and pulled out the permission slip for next month's field trip. Parent signature required. I signed my mother's name with steady hands, no hesitation, no guilt. Then I pulled out every other form in my folder that had been waiting for their attention. Permission slips, emergency, contact updates, acknowledgement of school policies, consent for advanced placement testing. I signed them all. A woman in front of me turned around. Mrs. Rodriguez, mother of twins in my grade. Her eyes were kind and sad. Did they not come?" "No," I met her gaze. "They didn't?" "I'm so sorry, honey." She looked genuinely distressed. "Do you need a ride home? Or, I don't know what you need, but if there's anything I can do..." "I'm fine, thank you." She hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. "My sister runs a mentorship program for students. If you ever need someone to talk to, or if you need an adult to sign things officially..." She trailed off, embarrassed. "I shouldn't assume, I remember what it was like. My parents never came to anything, either." I took the card, studying it. Maria Torres, Youth Advocacy Coordinator. A phone number and email address. "Thank you," I said again, meaning it this time. "Really?" "You're a remarkable young woman," Mrs. Rodriguez said quietly. "Don't let anyone make you forget that. Not even your parents." After the meeting, I didn't go home immediately. I took the bus downtown to the community centre where I'd volunteered in my previous timeline. The building looked shabbier than I remembered, more run down. Of course, this was before the renovation that would happen in 2 years. The director, Mr. Harrison, was closing up. He was younger than I remembered, less grey in his beard. "Can I help you?" He looked surprised to see someone so young at this hour. "I'd like to volunteer," I said. "I'm good at tutoring. Math, science, English, whatever you need." He studied me for a moment, taking in my age, my school uniform, the folder still clutched in my hands. "How old are you?" 14. "That's pretty young to volunteer. Most of our tutors are college students or adults." "I know, but I'm reliable, and I understand what these kids need." I held his gaze. "I know what it's like when no one shows up for you." Something in my face must have convinced him, or maybe it was the quiet certainty in my voice. "All right, we meet Tuesday and Thursday evenings, 6 to 8, but I'll need parent permission." I pulled out a blank form I'd taken from the school counsellor's office. "I'll bring it next week." "Signed?" "Signed." He handed me an information packet. "Read through this. If you're still interested, come back Tuesday." I started the following week with my mother's forged signature on the permission form. Mr. Harrison glanced at it, filed it away, and never questioned it again. The kids I tutored were hungry for attention in a way I recognised immediately. They asked questions not because they didn't understand the material, but because they wanted someone to listen. I listened. I helped them with homework, but I also helped them fill out forms their parents didn't have time for, taught them how to forge signatures cleanly, showed them how to be self-sufficient without becoming hard. A girl named Maya, 10 years old with gap teeth and suspicious eyes, was my first real student. She didn't trust easily. "Why are you here?" she asked during our first session. "Don't you have better things to do?" "Probably," I admitted, "but I like it here." "Why?" "Because you all remind me of me, and I wished someone had shown up for me the way I'm showing up for you." She considered this. "Your parents suck too?" "Sometimes." I kept my voice neutral. "They try. They just don't always succeed." "Mine don't try." She said it matter-of-factly, without self-pity. "My mum works 2 jobs. My dad left. I mostly take care of my little brother." "That's hard." "Yeah." She looked down at her math homework. "I'm not good at this." "You haven't had anyone to teach you properly. That's different from not being good at it." We worked through her homework together. By the end of the session, she'd solved 3 problems on her own. The pride on her face was worth every minute. At home, I stopped waiting for my parents to notice me. I made my own dinner when they were out with Vivian, did my own laundry, attended every school event alone, and stopped feeling ashamed about it. When teachers asked where my parents were, I said they couldn't make it, without explanation or apology. I joined the debate team again, but this time I didn't do it for college applications or parental approval. I did it because I liked the structure of arguments, the clarity of rhetoric, the satisfaction of winning through logic rather than emotion. Our first competition was in October. I won every round, taking first place in the novice division. The trophy was small, cheap plastic painted gold. I kept it on my desk where no one saw it but me. Vivian noticed the changes first. She'd always been perceptive despite her neediness. She came into my room one evening, maybe 2 months after my rebirth, and stood in the doorway, looking uncertain. "You're different," she said. I looked up from my homework. "Am I?" "You don't..." She struggled for words. "You don't try anymore. With them." "Why should I?" She flinched like I'd slapped her. "Eleanor, they love you. Do they?" I kept my voice level, clinical. "When was the last time they came to one of my events? When was the last time they asked about my day without immediately pivoting to something about you? When was the last time they treated me like I mattered as much as you do?" "That's not fair." "No," I agreed. "It's not. But it's true. They're just... I need more help. I'm not as naturally good at things as you are." "That's not my fault." I set down my pencil. "And it's not my job to be invisible so you can take up all the space." Her eyes filled with tears. Real ones, not the performative crying she used on our parents. "I never asked you to be invisible." "You didn't have to. They decided that on their own. But I'm done participating in it." She left, without arguing. We were never close after that conversation, but we were honest. That felt more valuable than the fake sisterhood we'd performed before. The weeks folded into months. I maintained my perfect grades, not for them, but for myself. I won debate competitions and brought home trophies that no one congratulated me for. I tutored at the community centre twice a week, building relationships with kids who needed me. Thanksgiving came. Our extended family gathered at our house. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. Everyone asked Vivian about her art, her latest gallery showing, her scholarship applications to prestigious art schools. She glowed under the attention. When my grandmother asked what I'd been up to, my mother answered before I could. "Oh, Eleanor's doing wonderfully. All A's as usual. You know, Eleanor, always so responsible." Responsible. The word that meant invisible. The word that meant we don't have to worry about her. "Actually," I said, and everyone turned to look at me. "I've been volunteering at the community centre, tutoring kids whose parents work too much to help with homework. And I won first place in the regional debate competition last month." My grandmother's eyes lit up. "A debate competition? That's wonderful. Why didn't anyone mention this?" Silence. My parents exchanged glances. "We didn't know," my father said finally. "I told you." My voice was calm. "You were on the phone with Vivian's art teacher. You said, 'That's nice, honey,' and went back to your conversation." More silence. Uncomfortable now. "Eleanor." My mother's voice was strained. "This isn't the time." "You're right." I stood, collecting my plate. "Excuse me, I have homework." I spent the rest of Thanksgiving in my room, unbothered. When my grandmother knocked an hour later, I let her in. "I'm proud of you," she said, sitting on my bed. "Your mother was always the same way with your uncle. So focused on the one who needed more help that she forgot to celebrate the one who was doing well on their own." "It's fine." "It's not." She touched my hand. "But you're handling it better than your uncle did. He became angry. You've become self-sufficient." "Is that better?" "Different. Both have their costs." The second parent-teacher meeting came in spring. I sat in the same gymnasium, same third row, same empty seats. But this time, Mrs. Rodriguez sat beside me. She didn't make a big deal of it, just smiled and said she'd wanted to hear Mrs. Patterson's speech firsthand. When my name was called and the familiar silence descended, Mrs. Rodriguez stood with me. She applauded, loud and proud, like I was hers. Her twins, sitting on her other side, stood too and cheered. Mrs. Patterson's smile was real this time, not pitying, approving. Other parents joined the applause, not because they knew me, but because Mrs. Rodriguez had shown them how. The gymnasium filled with sound, and for the first time, I let myself feel it. Not the hollow performance of the first timeline, but genuine recognition. After the meeting, my parents called. My mother sounded stressed. "Eleanor, we're so sorry we missed another meeting. There was an emergency with Vivian's scholarship application." "It's fine," I said, and meant it. "We'll make it to the next one, I promise." "You don't have to." The words came out gentle, not angry. "I don't need you there anymore." Silence on the other end, then quietly. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm okay, I'm doing well, and I've learnt to do it without you." "Eleanor, she sounded hurt. Actually hurt. "We never meant to make you feel—" "I know, but intent doesn't change impact. I have to go. I have tutoring tonight." I hung up before she could respond. They came to the next meeting, both of them sitting in the third row, looking uncomfortable and out of place among parents who attended regularly. When Mrs. Patterson called my name, they stood. They applauded. My father even whistled, awkward and too loud. I looked at them from the stage, saw them trying, saw them performing parenthood 3 years too late, saw the guilt in their faces, the recognition of what they'd lost. I nodded acknowledgement and sat down. After the meeting, they tried to take me to dinner. "To celebrate," my mother said, smiling too brightly, "we could go to that Italian place you used to love." "I have plans," I said. "Mrs. Rodriguez invited me to meet her sister, the one who runs the mentorship program." "Oh." My mother looked at Ms. Rodriguez, who'd appeared beside me like a guardian angel. That's wonderful." "It is," I agreed. My father cleared his throat. "Maybe next week? We could all go out. As a family." "Maybe." I didn't commit, didn't refuse, just left the possibility hanging in the air between us, uncertain and unresolved. They tried harder after that, started showing up to more events, though never all of them. Asked about my day, though Vivian still monopolised dinner conversation, commented on my trophies, though they never asked about the competitions themselves. It felt performative, desperate, like they were trying to rewrite history they hadn't known I'd been keeping track of. I was polite, appreciative even, but I didn't need them anymore. That was the difference. I'd learned to sign my own forms, make my own decisions, validate my own accomplishments. Their approval had become optional rather than essential. Vivian graduated that spring with honours. Our parents threw her a massive party, catered dinner, relatives flying in from 3 states, a banner that said, "Congratulations, Vivian," in letters 3 feet tall. I helped set up in the morning and stayed for exactly 1 hour before leaving to tutor. My mother caught me at the door. "You don't have to go. This is a family event." "I know." I kissed her cheek, feeling nothing in particular. "But those kids are counting on me. I'll see you later." She looked at me like she was seeing someone unfamiliar, someone who'd grown up while she wasn't looking. "When did you become so independent?" I wanted to say, "When you stopped showing up. When you chose her over me so many times, I stopped counting. When I learned that love shouldn't have to be earned through achievement. When I realised I was enough all on my own." Instead, I said, "I've always been independent. You just never noticed." 2 years later, I graduated with a perfect GPA and acceptances to 7 universities, including 2 Ivy Leagues. The ceremony was outdoors, warm June sun making the programme stick to sweaty palms. Families clustered together in the metal bleachers, preparing cameras and tissues. My parents sat in the 3rd row, Vivian beside them, filming on her phone. Mrs. Rodriguez was there too, with her sister Maria and a group of kids from the community centre. They'd made a banner that said Eleanor's crew in wobbly marker letters. Maya held one end, gap-toothed smile bright in the sunlight. When they called my name, Eleanor Bennett, summa cum laude, valedictorian, recipient of the Presidential Scholarship, the applause was thunderous. My parents stood crying. Vivian whistled. The kids from the centre screamed my name like I'd won an Olympic medal. Mrs. Rodriguez wiped her eyes with both hands. I walked across the stage, accepted my diploma, and looked out at the crowd. At all the people who'd shown up. And at the 2 people in the 3rd row who'd finally learned to see me, but only after I'd stopped needing them to. The photographer asked me to smile. I did, but not for the camera. For myself. For the girl I'd been 3 years ago, sitting alone in a gymnasium and learning that salvation didn't come from other people's attention. It came from knowing your own worth, even when the room was empty. After the ceremony, my parents wanted photos. Family photos. "All of us together," my mother said, gesturing for Vivian and me to flank them. "To commemorate this special day." 1 second, I walked to where my community centre crew was waiting. "Get in here," I told them. "You too, Mrs. Rodriguez, Maria. You're in this." We took photos, dozens of them, kids climbing on my shoulders, Mrs. Rodriguez kissing my cheek, everyone laughing and crying and celebrating like this mattered, like I mattered. My parents watched from a distance. When I finally returned to them, my mother's eyes were red. "We're so proud of you," she said. "Thank you." I meant it, mostly. "I'm proud of me too." My father handed me an envelope. "We wanted to give you this, for college." Inside was a cheque, a significant amount, more than they'd spent on any of Vivian's celebrations combined. Guilt money, apology money, an attempt to buy back 3 years of absence with a single gesture. I stared at it, feeling nothing in particular. "You don't have to take it," my mother said quickly, misreading my silence. "If you're still angry with us—" "I'm not angry." I folded the bow, check, and tucked it into my purse. But I want you to know I would have been fine without it. I've been applying for scholarships since freshman year, working part-time at the library. I've learned how to take care of myself. We know. My father's voice cracked. We know you have. And we're sorry we made you learn that so young. I looked at them both. Really looked. Saw the regret in their faces, the understanding that had come too late. They'd lost years of my life to their favoritism, and they knew it now. That knowledge was its own punishment. I forgive you, I said, not because they deserved it, because I deserved peace. But things are different now. I'm different. We can see that. My mother touched my face gently, like I might disappear if she pressed too hard. You're so strong? When did you get so strong? I've always been strong, I said. You just never noticed. That summer, before leaving for college, I organised a celebration at the community centre. Not for me, for all of us. Every kid I'd tutored over the past 3 years, every form I'd helped them sign, every moment of validation I'd given them when no one else would. We had pizza and music and a slideshow of all our achievements. Small things that felt enormous to kids who'd never been celebrated. Perfect scores on spelling tests, completed homework assignments, signed permission slips for field trips, moments of self-sufficiency we'd earned together. Mrs. Rodriguez gave a speech that made everyone cry. Eleanor taught us that family isn't just who you're born to. It's who shows up, who stays, who sees you when you're invisible to everyone else. The kids applauded. I cried, finally, not from pain, but from relief, from the pure satisfaction of knowing I'd taken my abandonment and turned it into something that mattered, something that helped people who needed exactly what I'd needed. My parents came to that celebration too, unannounced, uninvited. They stood in the back and watched me with my real family, the one I'd built from scratch, signature by signature, moment by moment. When it was over, my mother approached me while I was cleaning up. Can we talk? We sat on the community centre steps in the cooling evening air. Fireflies were just beginning to emerge, small lights in the gathering dark. I've been thinking, my mother said slowly, about all the times we didn't show up, all the forms we didn't sign, all the moments we missed because we were so focused on your sister. Okay. I don't have an excuse. Her voice shook. We fell into a pattern. Vivian was always so dramatic, always needing attention, and you were so capable, so self-sufficient. It was easy to let you handle things. Easy to tell ourselves you were fine without us. I wasn't fine. I kept my voice steady, factual. I was drowning, but I learnt to swim. I can see that. She wiped her eyes. I can see what an incredible person you've become. And I'm ashamed it happened without us, that you had to become this strong because we failed you. I could have been cruel, could have listed every missed event, every forged signature, every night I'd cried myself to sleep wondering why I wasn't enough. Every moment of invisible pain that had carved me hollow. But I was tired of carrying that weight. You can't fix the past, I said, but you can do better now. Not for me. I don't need it anymore, but for other parents who might make the same mistake. For other kids like me who are signing their own forms and pretending it doesn't hurt. How? She looked at me desperately, like I had answers she'd been searching for. How do we do better? Show up, I said simply. Just show up, consistently, even when it's inconvenient, even when the other child seems to need you more, even when the capable one says they're fine. Show up anyway. She nodded, crying harder now. I'm so sorry, Eleanor, for all of it, for making you invisible, for teaching you that love had to be earned through achievement, for every single time we chose her over you. I know. I took her hand, felt how cold her fingers were. And I forgive you. But I need you to understand. I don't need you the way I used to. That girl who wanted your approval died 3 years ago. I'm someone different now. I can see that. She squeezed my hand. You're magnificent. I smiled. I am. Before I left for college, I framed that first permission slip I'd signed myself. The one from 3 years ago with my mother's forged signature in shaky 14-year-old handwriting. The ink was slightly smudged where my hand had trembled. I hung it in my dorm room as a reminder, not of pain, not of abandonment, but of the moment I decided to become my own parent, my own advocate, my own source of validation and pride. My roommate asked about it during move-in, curious about the strange choice of decor. Why would you frame a permission slip? Because it was the first thing I did for myself, I said, adjusting it until it hung perfectly straight. The first time I decided I didn't need anyone else's signature to matter. She looked at it thoughtfully, reading the date, the crude forgery, the institutional language of the form. That's actually really powerful. It is. I stepped back, satisfied with the placement. It reminds me that I'm enough, that I've always been enough, even when the people who should have seen it didn't. My parents called that first week of college, both on the line, asking how classes were, if my dorm was comfortable, if I needed anything. The attention felt strange, excessive, desperate, like they were trying to make up for years of absence with increased frequency now that I was gone. I'm fine, I told them, looking at the framed permission slip. Really, I'm great. We miss you, my mother said, and I heard the truth in it, the regret. I miss you too. And surprisingly, it was true. I missed the parents they could have been, the parents they were trying to become. But I didn't need them anymore. That was the difference. That was freedom. Years later, I'd go back to that community centre as a graduate student, then as a professional with a degree in social work. I'd create a program specifically for kids whose parents couldn't or wouldn't show up. I'd teach them to sign their own forms, advocate for themselves, build their own families from people who chose them. I'd show them that neglect didn't have to destroy them. It could transform them into people who showed up for others. Mrs. Rodriguez would tell me I'd turned my pain into purpose. She'd say I'd become the parent to others that I'd needed for myself. She'd be right. But in that moment, standing in my new dorm room with my framed permission slip hanging on the wall, I simply felt at peace. The girl who'd sat alone in gymnasiums, who'd forged signatures in desperate silence, who'd learned her worth in empty rooms. She'd survived. More than survived. She'd transformed. I thought about my younger self, the one who'd died and been reborn with memories intact. I'd used that second chance not to change them, but to change myself, to stop waiting for validation that would never come, to stop making myself small to fit into spaces that weren't meant for me. I'd learned to sign my own forms, all of them, the literal ones and the metaphorical ones. Permission to exist, permission to matter, permission to be enough exactly as I was. And in learning that, I'd become the one thing I'd always needed. Someone who would never miss my parent-teacher meetings. Someone who would always show up. Myself. The evening light filtered through my dorm window, casting long shadows across the room. My phone buzzed. A text from Maya. She'd signed her first permission slip alone, her mother at work, her father still absent. She was scared, but proud. "You've got this," I wrote back. "You've always had this." I looked at the framed permission slip one more time. At the shaky signature, the careful forgery, the moment of self-sufficiency born from necessity. At the physical proof of the night I'd stopped waiting for someone else to validate my existence. Then I turned toward my future, toward the life I'd built signature by signature, moment by moment, choice by choice, a life where I was enough, where I'd always been enough, where I would always be enough. The girl in the gymnasium had learned to stand alone, but the woman I'd become had learned something better. That standing alone didn't mean being lonely. It meant being complete, whole, unbreakable. I'd missed my own parent-teacher meetings for 3 years, and I'd shown up for myself anyway. That was the real rebirth. Not the impossible second chance, but the choice to become my own salvation. The decision to stop drowning and learn to swim. The moment I'd realised that the approval I'd been desperately seeking had been inside me all along. And in the end, that was enough. It was always enough.